In the quiet suburb of Maple Grove, nestled on the outskirts of Minneapolis, Minnesota, life moved at a steady, predictable pace. Picturesque houses with manicured lawns lined streets named after trees, and neighbors greeted each other with warm smiles and friendly waves. It was in this idyllic setting that the Henderson family made their home. A beautiful two-case colonial with a white picket fence and a red door that seemed to embody the American dream. David Henderson, 42-year-old investment banker, was known in the community for his charismatic personality and his dedication to local charity. His wife, Sandra Henderson, 39, worked as a high school English teacher and was beloved by her students' passion and creativity. Together, they raised Sandra's daughter from a previous marriage, 16-year-old Sharon, a bright and vivacious teenager with a promising future ahead of her. To the outside world, the Hendersons appeared to be the perfect family. David coached the local Little League team, Sandra organized the annual book fair, and Sharon was a straight-A student involved in various extracurricular activities. Their life seemed to be a testament to the power of blended families and the strength of love. However, beneath the surface of this seemingly perfect existence, dark currents were swirling. Unbeknownst to Sandra and Sharon, David had been harboring a secret that threatened to tear their family apart. For the past 8 months, he had been engaged in an affair with Melissa Winters, a 28-year-old junior executive at his firm. The affair had begun innocently enough, with late nights at the office and shared cups of coffee. David found in Melissa a youthful energy and ambition that rekindled feelings he thought long forgotten. For Melissa, David represented stability, success, and the attention she craved. Their stolen moments turned into clandestine meetings, and before long, they were entangled in a web of deceit that seemed impossible to escape. As the affair progressed, David became increasingly paranoid about being discovered. He began to withdraw from his family, making excuses for his absences, and growing irritable at the slightest provocation. Sandra noticed the change in her husband, but attributed it to stress at work. She tried to be supportive, planning special dinners and suggesting family outings, but David's distance only seemed to grow. Sharon, however, was more perceptive than her mother. She noticed the hushed phone calls, the secretive text messages, and the way her stepfather's eyes would dart nervously when certain topics were broached at the dinner table. Being a teenager in the digital age, Sharon was well versed in the signs of infidelity, having seen similar patterns play out in the lives of her friends' parents. One fateful afternoon in late April, Sharon decided to confront her stepfather. She waited until Sandra had left for a teachers' conference in St. Paul, knowing she would have the opportunity to speak with David alone. As David returned from work, loosening his tie and setting down his briefcase, Sharon approached him in the kitchen. What transpired in those next few moments would forever alter the course of their lives. Sharon, with a mix of anger and disappointment, confronted David about his affair. She told him she knew he was seeing someone else and threatened to tell her mother he didn't come clean himself. David, caught off guard and overwhelmed by panic, saw his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. In a moment of blind fear and rage, he lashed out at Sharon. The ensuing struggle was brief but violent. In his desperation to silence Sharon and protect his secret, David committed an unthinkable act. He took the life of his stepdaughter. The scene that greeted Sandra upon her return home the next day was one of unimaginable horror. She found Sharon's lifeless body in the basement, hidden beneath a tarp. The house was eerily quiet, with no sign of David. In shock and disbelief, Sandra called 911, anguished cries echoing through the once peaceful home. Detective Michael Reeves, a veteran of the Maple Grove Police Department, was the first to respond to the call. As he pulled up to the Henderson home, he was struck by the contrast between the idyllic exterior and the tragedy that lay within. The red door, once a symbol of welcome, now seemed to him like a portent of the bloodshed inside. Reeves found Sandra in a state of hysteria, clutching Sharon's favorite teddy bear and rocking back and forth on the living room floor. It took several minutes to calm her enough to get a coherent statement. Through her tears, Sandra managed to recount the events leading up to her gruesome discovery. As the investigation began in earnest, quiet community of Maple Grove was plunged into a state of shock and fear. News of Sharon's murder spread quickly, and neighbors who had once felt safe leaving their doors unlocked now double-checked their security systems and kept a watchful eye on their children. The police cordoned off the Henderson home, transforming it from a family dwelling into a crime scene. Forensic teams combed through every inch of the property, collecting evidence and piecing together the events of that tragic night. Blood spatter analysis, fingerprint collection, and DNA sampling became the grim tasks that would hopefully lead to justice for Sharon. Detective Reeves and his partner, Detective Laura Chen, began the painstaking process of interviewing friends, family, and neighbors. They started with Sandra, gently probing for any information that might shed light on Sharon's death and David's disappearance. Sandra, still in shock, could offer little insight. She insisted that David loved Sharon as his own daughter and couldn't fathom him being involved in her death. As the investigation progressed, a clearer picture of the Henderson family dynamics began to emerge. Interviews with Sharon's friends revealed a more complex relationship between the teenager and her stepfather. While they presented a united front in public, there were whispers of tension and arguments behind closed doors. One of Sharon's closest friends, Jessica Torres, recounted a conversation she had with Sharon just days before her death. Sharon had confided in Jessica about her suspicions regarding David's infidelity. She had expressed her anger and disappointment, feeling betrayed not just on her mother's behalf, but also on her own. Sharon had viewed David as a father figure and felt deeply hurt by his apparent betrayal. The detectives also spoke with David's colleagues at the investment firm. It was here that they first learned of Melissa Winters and her close relationship with David. Co-workers described long hours spent together in the office and hushed conversations that would abruptly end when others approached. While no one could confirm an affair, the circumstantial evidence was mounting. As the police dug deeper into David's life, they uncovered a trail of financial irregularities. Large sums of money had been withdrawn from the family's accounts in the weeks leading up to Sharon's death. Hotel receipts and credit card statements painted a picture of a man living a double life, torn between his family obligations and his desire for Melissa. 5 days into the investigation, a breakthrough came in the form of a traffic camera footage. David's car was spotted heading north on Interstate 35 toward the Canadian border. This discovery shifted the focus of the investigation, transforming it into a multi-state manhunt. The FBI was brought in to assist, and David Henderson's face was plastered across news channels and social media platforms nationwide. Back in Maple Grove, the community rallied around Sandra Henderson. Neighbors brought casseroles and offered words of comfort, though no words could ease the pain of losing a child. Sandra's colleagues at the high school organized a candlelight vigil for Sharon, and hundreds of students and community members gathered to share memories of the vibrant young woman whose life had been cut tragically short. As the days turned into weeks, the investigation continued to uncover disturbing details about the case. Forensic analysis of Sharon's body revealed defensive wounds, indicating a struggle before her death. Murder weapon, a kitchen knife, was found hidden in the garden shed, hastily cleaned but still bearing traces of Sharon's blood. The autopsy report painted a grim picture of Sharon's final moments. The coroner determined that she had died from multiple stab wounds, with the fatal blow piercing her heart. The brutality of the attack suggested a crime of passion, frenzied act carried out in a moment of extreme emotion. Detective Reeves and Detective Chen worked tirelessly, following every lead and chasing down every tip that came into the hotline set up for the case. They interviewed Melissa Winters, who initially denied any involvement with David beyond a professional relationship. However, under intense questioning, she eventually broke down and admitted to the affair. Melissa's testimony provided crucial insight into David's state of mind in the days leading up to Sharon's murder. She described a man increasingly paranoid, agitated, constantly looking over his shoulder and jumping at shadows. David had confided in her his fear of being discovered, not just by Sandra, but by Sharon as well. He had mentioned Sharon's suspicious behavior and her pointed questions about his late nights at the office. The breakthrough in the case came nearly a month after Sharon's death. A motel owner in a small town just south of the Canadian border recognized David from the news report. David had been staying at the motel under an assumed name, paying cash and keeping to himself. The motel owner called the local police, who promptly alerted the FBI. The arrest was swift and without incident. David Henderson, the once respected family man and pillar of the community, was found sitting on the bed in his motel room, staring blankly at the wall. He offered no resistance as the officers handcuffed him and read him his rights. The man they took into custody bore little resemblance to the charismatic banker from Maple Grove. His hair was unkempt, his clothes were disheveled, and his eyes held a haunted look that spoke of the weight of his action. As David was transported back to Minnesota to face charges, the community of Maple Grove grappled with the shocking turn of events. The revelation that Sharon's killer was not some unknown predator, but her own stepfather, sent waves of disbelief and anger through the town. People who had once considered David a friend now spoke of him in hushed, disgusted tones. Sandra Henderson, upon learning of David's arrest, fell into a deep depression. The betrayal she felt was twofold. Not only had her husband been unfaithful, but he had also taken the life of her beloved daughter. Friends and family rallied around her, offering support and helping her navigate the complex emotions of grief, anger, and betrayal. The trial of David Henderson became a media sensation, drawing attention from across the country. Prosecution painted a damning picture of a man who had chosen to commit an unspeakable act, rather than face the consequences of his infidelity. They presented evidence of the affair, the financial misdeeds, and the brutal nature of Sharon's murder. David's defense team attempted to portray him as a man who had suffered a temporary break from reality, overwhelmed by stress and fear. They brought in expert witnesses to testify about the psychological impact of leading a double life and the toll it can take on an individual's mental state. However, their arguments fell flat in the face of the overwhelming evidence and the brutality of the crime. Throughout the trial, Sandra Henderson sat stoically in the courtroom, her face a mask of grief and determination. She listened as the details of her husband's betrayal and her daughter's final moments were laid bare for all to hear. Her strength in the face of such tragedy moved many in the courtroom to tears. After a 3-week trial and 2 days of deliberation, the jury returned with a guilty verdict. David Henderson was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As the verdict was read, a collective sigh seemed to pass through the courtroom. For many, it felt like the first step towards closure in a tragedy that had shaken their community to its core. In the aftermath of the trial, Maple Grove struggled to heal. The Henderson home, once a symbol of suburban bliss, stood empty, a silent reminder of the tragedy that had unfolded within its walls. Despite offers from real estate agents, Sandra couldn't bring herself to sell the house where she had shared so many happy memories with Sharon. Melissa Winters, though not charged with any crime, found her life irrevocably changed by her association with David. She left her job at the investment firm and moved away from Minneapolis, seeking to escape the whispers and accusatory glances that followed her wherever she went. As the months passed, the community of Maple Grove slowly began to heal. The tragedy had shattered their sense of security, but it had also brought them closer together. Neighbors looked out for one another with a new sense of vigilance, and community events took on a deeper meaning of connection and support. Sandra Henderson, with the support of her friends and Sharon's teachers, established a scholarship fund in Sharon's name. The Sharon Henderson Memorial Scholarship would be awarded annually to a student who exemplified Sharon's passion for literature and her kind-hearted spirit. It was a way for Sandra to ensure that her daughter's memory lived on and that some good could come from the tragedy. In the years that followed, the case of Sharon Henderson became a cautionary tale, a stark reminder that sometimes the greatest dangers can lurk within our own homes. It sparked discussions about family dynamics, pressures of modern life, and the importance of open communication between parents and children. For Detective Reeves and Detective Chen, the case left an indelible mark on their careers. They had seen the darkest side of human nature, witnessed the destruction of a family from within and brought a killer to justice. The experience strengthened their resolve to protect their community and to never take anything at face value. David Henderson's life in prison was a far cry from the luxurious existence he had once known. He spent his days in a small cell, haunted by the memories of his actions and the life he had thrown away. Attempts by journalists to secure an interview were met with silence. David had retreated into himself, perhaps finally grappling with the magnitude of his crimes. As for Sandra Henderson, she found herself on a long and difficult journey of healing. There were days when the grief threatened to overwhelm her, when the memory of Sharon's laugh or the sight of her empty room would bring her to her knees. But there were also days when she could smile at a cherished memory or feel a sense of purpose in carrying on Sharon's legacy through the scholarship. The quiet suburb of Maple Grove would never be quite the same. The illusion of perfect safety had been shattered, replaced by a more nuanced understanding of the complexities of human nature. Yet, in facing this tragedy together, the community had discovered a resilience they never knew they possessed. The red door of the Henderson home, once a cheerful welcome, now stood as a poignant reminder of the secrets that can hide behind even the most picturesque facades. It served as a silent sentinel, urging those who passed by to hold their loved ones close and to never take a moment for granted. In the end, the case of Sharon Henderson and the terrible secret that led to her death became more than just a tragic tale. It became a catalyst for change, a reason to look deeper, communicate more openly, and to cherish the relationships we hold dear. For in the face of unimaginable darkness, it is these connections that light the way forward, offering hope and the promise of healing, even in the aftermath of the most heartrending loss. As the seasons changed and life in Maple Grove continued, the memory of Sharon Henderson lived on. In the rustle of leaves in the fall, the laughter of children in the park, and the quiet moments of reflection, her spirit remained a part of the community she had loved. And though the wound of her loss would never fully heal, the love she had inspired continued to touch lives, a testament to the enduring power of a life well lived, however brief. The tragedy that befell the Henderson family served as a stark reminder that appearances can be deceiving, and that the human heart is capable of both great love and terrible betrayal. It underscored the importance of trust, honesty, and open communication in relationships, and the devastating consequences that can arise when these foundations are eroded. For those who knew Sharon, her memory became a guiding light, inspiring acts of kindness and a renewed appreciation for the preciousness of life. Her friends, now in college, carried her spirit with them, pursuing their dreams with the enthusiasm and determination that had been Sharon's hallmark. In the quiet moments, when the bustle of daily life subsided, the residents of Maple Grove would sometimes pause and reflect on the events that had shaken their community. They would remember Sharon's bright smile, Sandra's resilience in the face of unimaginable loss, and the shocking revelation of David's betrayal. These memories served as a reminder to cherish their loved ones, to remain vigilant, and to never take the peace of their community for granted. And so, life in Maple Grove continued, forever changed but not defeated. The case of Sharon Henderson, tragic as it was, became woven into the fabric of the community's history. It was a case of loss and betrayal, but also one of strength, justice, and the indomitable human spirit. In the end, it was a reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope and healing can emerge, carried forward by the collective strength of a community united in compassion and remembrance. As the years passed, the impact of Sharon Henderson's tragic death continued to ripple through the community of Maple Grove. The scholarship fund established in her name grew, becoming a beacon of hope for aspiring students. Each year, as a new recipient was announced, the community gathered to remember Sharon and celebrate the potential she had embodied. Sandra Henderson, though forever changed by the loss of her daughter and the betrayal of her husband, found a new purpose in life. She channeled her grief into advocacy, becoming a voice for victims of domestic violence and hidden abuse. Her case, painful as it was, served as a powerful reminder that danger can lurk behind even the most respectable facades. Sandra began speaking at schools and community centers, sharing her experience and urging others to be vigilant and to speak up if they suspected something was amiss in their own lives or the lives of those around them. Her strength and resilience in the face of such tragedy inspired many, and she became a pillar of support for others who had experienced loss or betrayal. Detective Michael Reeves, haunted by the case that had shaken his faith in human nature, found himself unable to let go of the lingering questions surrounding Sharon's death. Even after David Henderson's conviction, Reeves felt there were aspects of the case that didn't quite add up. In his free time, he pored over the case files, searching for any details he might have missed. His persistence paid off when 3 years after the trial, new evidence came to light. A routine audit of the investment firm where David had worked uncovered a complex embezzlement scheme that had been operating for years. As investigators dug deeper, they discovered that David Henderson had not been working alone. This revelation cast the events leading up to Sharon's murder in a new light. It became clear that David's affair with Melissa Winters had been more than just a romantic entanglement. It was part of a larger conspiracy to defraud the company and its client. The fear of exposure that had driven David to commit murder extended beyond his marital infidelity to encompass a web of financial crimes. Detective Reeves, working with federal investigators, began to piece together a new timeline of events. It appeared that Sharon, tech-savvy and observant, had stumbled upon evidence of her stepfather's financial misdeeds in addition to his affair. This discovery had put her in even greater danger, as she posed a threat not just to David's marriage, but to his freedom and reputation. The case was reopened, and Melissa Winters was brought in for further questioning. Under intense scrutiny and faced with the prospect of being implicated in the embezzlement scheme, Melissa finally broke down and revealed the full extent of her involvement with David Henderson. She admitted to knowing about Sharon's discovery of their illegal activities and confessed that she had encouraged David to take care of the problem before they were exposed. While she claimed she never explicitly told David to harm Sharon, her words had contributed to his desperate state of mind in the lead-up to the murder. This new information sent shockwaves through the community once again. The tragedy that had befallen Sharon Henderson was even more complex and heartbreaking than originally thought. She had not only been the victim of a stepfather's betrayal, but had unwittingly stumbled into a dangerous world of corporate crime. For Sandra Henderson, this revelation brought a fresh wave of grief and anger. The knowledge that her daughter had been silenced to protect not just an affair, but a criminal conspiracy added a new dimension to her loss. She found herself reliving the pain of Sharon's death, grappling with the realization that the truth had been even darker than she had imagined. The legal system swung into action once more. Melissa Winters was arrested and charged as an accessory to Sharon's murder, as well as for her role in the embezzlement scheme. The investment firm was rocked by scandal, with several high-level executives implicated in the fraudulent activity. As news of these developments spread, the residents of Maple Grove were forced to confront the reality that the evil they had thought was behind them had roots that ran much deeper. The idyllic facade of their community had been irreparably cracked, revealing a complex underworld, deceit and corruption that had existed beneath the surface. The trial of Melissa Winters became another media sensation. Unlike David Henderson, who had remained largely silent about his crimes, Melissa took the stand in her own defense. She painted a picture of a naive young woman seduced by the promise of wealth and status, manipulated by David into participating in his schemes. Her testimony provided a chilling insight into the events leading up to Sharon's murder. She described David's increasing paranoia as Sharon began to ask questions about his late nights and secretive phone calls. Melissa recounted conversations where David had expressed fear that Sharon was onto them and might expose their illegal activities. While Melissa maintained that she never explicitly encouraged violence against Sharon, the prosecution argued that her actions and words had contributed to creating the volatile situation that led to the teenager's death. They portrayed Melissa as a willing participant in both the financial crimes and the cover-up that followed Sharon's murder. The community of Maple Grove watched the trial with a mix of horror and fascination. Many who had known David and interacted with him socially were forced to confront the possibility they too could have been deceived by his charismatic facade. The case sparked discussions about trust, appearances, and the hidden currents that can run beneath seemingly tranquil surfaces. As the trial progressed, Sandra Henderson found herself in the spotlight once again. She attended each day of the proceedings, determined to see justice served not only for Sharon, but for all those who had been victimized by David and Melissa's actions. Her quiet dignity in the face of these new revelations earned her the respect and admiration of many. The jury deliberated for 4 days before returning a verdict. Melissa Winters was found guilty on all counts, including accessory to murder and multiple charges related to the embezzlement scheme. She was sentenced to 25 years in prison, possibility of parole after 15 years. In the wake of the trial, the community of Maple Grove was left to grapple with the far-reaching implications of the case. The revelation that such a complex web of deceit had existed in their midst led to a period of soul-searching and reflection. Community leaders organized town hall meetings to discuss ways to foster greater transparency and accountability in local businesses and institutions. The investment firm at the center of the embezzlement scandal underwent a complete overhaul. New management was brought in, and stringent oversight measures were implemented. The firm's reputation had been severely damaged, and it would take years to rebuild trust with clients and the community. For Detective Michael Reeves, the resolution of the case brought a sense of closure, but also deep wariness. The years he had spent pursuing the truth had taken a toll on him personally and professionally. While he felt satisfaction in having uncovered the full extent of the crimes, he was also haunted by the thought that if he had seen the signs earlier, perhaps Sharon's life could have been saved. Reeves decided to channel his experiences into education, developing a program to train other law enforcement officers in recognizing the subtle signs of financial crimes and domestic abuse. His work became instrumental in helping other communities uncover and prevent similar tragedies. Sandra Henderson, too, found a new direction in the aftermath of the second trial. She expanded her advocacy work to include financial literacy education, particularly for young people. She believed that if Sharon had been better equipped to understand the financial discrepancies she had noticed, she might have been able to seek help before it was too late. The Sharon Henderson Memorial Scholarship expanded its criteria to include students pursuing studies in forensic accounting and financial crime prevention. Sandra saw this as a way to honor her daughter's memory by empowering others to fight against the kind of corruption that had ultimately led to her death. As the community of Maple Grove slowly healed from this second wave of revelations, they found themselves forever changed. The trust that had once been given freely was now tempered with a healthy dose of skepticism. Neighbors looked out for one another with renewed vigilance, aware that appearances could be deceiving. The case of Sharon Henderson, David's betrayal, and the dark web of financial crimes became a cautionary tale, shared not just in Maple Grove, but in communities across the country. It served as a reminder of the importance of transparency, open communication, and the courage to speak up when something doesn't seem right. In the end, the tragedy that had befallen the Henderson family exposed not just one man's capacity for betrayal, but the potential for corruption to infect even the most seemingly respectable institution. It was a harsh lesson, but one that led to positive changes in how the community approached issues of trust, accountability, and justice. As the seasons continued to change in Maple Grove, the memory of Sharon Henderson remained a powerful force. Her life, though cut tragically short, had become a catalyst for change, inspiring a new generation to pursue truth and justice with unwavering determination. In this way, Sharon's spirit lived on, continuing to touch lives and make a difference in the world she left behind. The red door of the Henderson home, which had once symbolized the facade of a perfect family, was eventually repainted. The new owners, a young couple starting their own family, chose a warm, welcoming yellow. It was a small but significant change, representing the community's determination to move forward while never forgetting the lessons of the past. As the years rolled on, the case of Sharon Henderson became interwoven with the identity of Maple Grove itself. It was a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable darkness, community could come together, seek truth, and emerge stronger. The tragedy had tested their bonds, but ultimately, it had reinforced the importance of genuine connections and the power of collective resilience. In the quiet moments, when the bustle of daily life subsided, the residents of Maple Grove would sometimes pause and reflect on the events that had shaped their community. They would remember Sharon's bright smile, Sandra's unwavering strength, and the shocking revelations that had shattered their sense of security. These memories served as a constant reminder to cherish their loved ones, to remain vigilant, and to never take the peace of their community for granted. And so, life in Maple Grove continued, forever changed, but not defeated. The case of Sharon Henderson, tragic as it was, became a testament to the enduring spirit of a community that refused to be defined by its darkest moment. It was a case of loss and betrayal, but also one of strength, justice, and the indomitable human spirit. In the end, it was a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable tragedy, hope and healing can emerge, carried forward by the collective strength of a community united in compassion, remembrance, and an unwavering commitment to truth.